Welcome back to News Center. We head straight to Nakuru County, where Nakuru is gearing towards conferment of a charter to be a city in December. Article 184 of the Constitution provides a framework for according legible towns city status. Elphas Lagat now explores what city status would mean for the hospitality industry in Nakuru. Elphas, good morning, and what can you tell us?
Well, Brenda, good morning to you, and it is also a chilly morning here in Nakuru as well. Now, plans are top gear to make Nakuru a city by December, and of course that comes with a lot of dimensions. We've had conversation around infrastructure, and of course, as you've mentioned, Article 184 of the Constitution points out urban areas as well as towns, rather the framework in which towns can be made into city standards. And of course, Urban Areas and Towns Act that was revised in 2016 also outlines a particular threshold that a town needs to meet in order to be made a city. Of course, one of them is the very basic one, that at least the population should be at least 250,000 people. Of course, Nakuru, as of 2009 census, had people who exceed the number of 250,000 people. Of course, infrastructure, roads particularly, also is a critical component for any town to be conferred a city status. The road network needs to be up to standard, and of course there needs to be a solid garbage management model, or rather a way in which garbage that accrues in a city, or rather a town, needs to be contained. So Nakuru also is in preparing to actually be able to meet this threshold of managing garbage, which has been a challenge in the recent years. But for now, Brenda, we would want to focus on what this means for different stakeholders, particularly in Nakuru. So to give us perspective on what city status would mean for Nakuru, I'd be engaging a renowned hotelier, Christopher Comment, to just give us perspective into this. Mr. Comment, thank you so much for making time for KTN today. Just maybe begin for purposes of our viewers, introduce yourself. For how long have you been in the hotel industry?
Yeah, my name's Christopher Comment. I've been in hotel industry for the last 19 years. In Bontana, I've been in Bontana for the last 12 years. Yes.
And of course, there's this conversation of moving Nakuru to be a city by December. Right now, we have three cities, the capital, Nairobi, Mombasa, and Kisumu. And now Nakuru being touted to be to join the list of cities in the country. What would it mean, particularly for your hospitality industry?
Yeah, it will be a perfect nature for us, because we have capacity as Nakuru for accommodation in bed and conference facilities, and I believe it will be a plus for Nakuru. And given that Nakuru now has more hotels than before, we are looking at bed capacity of going to 2,000, which actually, if we have a conference of 2,000 plus, Nakuru will actually hold and to host the conference without any problem. Yeah.
Maybe as at now, as a group perhaps, do you have any plans of expansion? Do you see hoteliers trying to make more plans of expanding so that when we have a city, Nakuru as a city, we can accommodate high-end meetings and people trying to tap into the potential of Nakuru?
Yes. I believe and I request all investors actually to invest in bed capacity in Nakuru so as to accommodate the numbers, both local and international. And given that we have a lot of tourism attractions, like Nakuru being one of them, with Big Four and flamingos, which actually is rare in the whole world. So I believe with that we have the market, we have the external market. And secondly, we have the conference facilities which can host internationally, given that I believe come November of this year, we will be hosting an international conference center in Naivasha, which is actually within Nakuru County. Yes.
Of course, you've mentioned international conferences and international events. We had World Food Day and even the World Tourism, you remember, on 27th of September, as well as 16th of October, World Food Day. And perhaps Nakuru also has been mentioned as a centrally placed town, 2 hours to Nyeri, 2 hours to Nairobi, 2 hours to Eldoret, and even 2 hours to Kisumu. Do you feel that this perhaps could be a plus for Nakuru when it becomes a city?
Yes, it will be a plus for Nakuru, because Kisumu County will be hosting their conferences here. Uasin Gishu County will be hosting their conferences here. Nyeri County, and other economic blocks, the NOREP, which was coming up the other day. So it will be a plus for Nakuru. Yeah, and what I will say is that because of the number of bed capacity, we have no problem with bed capacity. So any number, and actually we are even anticipating the new hotel, like the Western Grand, the Tidy Suites, which are coming up. So it will add more beds. So we will be talking of 2,000 plus beds, which will be more than enough for us.
Let's talk about the challenges that faces Nakuru as at now. We understand that garbage management is a challenge. Access to water, particularly areas of Ronda going to Rescos, has had a consistent shortage of water. Do you feel now that with a city status, this can be a challenge, and perhaps how can it be addressed?
Given that we have our EBO governor, Honorable Lee Kinyanjui, and EPO CC for tourism, Dr. Ketienya, I think they are working on it. Given that we have Itare Dam and Chichemususu Dam. Actually, they are now doing the water pipeline to Nakuru, which is actually ongoing now as we talk. And I believe in the next 2-3 months, we will forget the problem of water. Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe lastly, as we finish up this conversation, Mr. Komen, real estate, let's talk about real estate. Perhaps with this town becoming a city, there are several concerns that the cost of living would be particularly high. You'd remember, you've mentioned that 2006 is when you actively started this business of Montana. And perhaps with it being a city, do you feel the concern of that maybe this would push prices very high for common Kenyans? Perhaps even getting a plot can be a huge challenge.
Yeah. Obvious, when something good comes up, it always comes with a price. So with me, I believe because of the city and the airport which is coming up also, it will shoot up the prices for land, and the normal life, it will be higher. Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Komen.
Yes,
thank you so much. That is Christopher Komen, who is the manager of Montana Group of Hotels, speaking to us on what to expect, particularly in the hospitality and hotel industry in Nakuru. Of course, the positive side of that, getting more numbers of cities in Kenya. But now that also comes on the flip side. There would be challenges, particularly on how to manage garbage and waste in Nakuru, as well as access to water, and of course, cost of living that might catapult with Nakuru becoming a city. But for now, of course, there is the positive response, particularly from a number of Nakuru residents that we've had a conversation